Hello, fellow travelers, and welcome to another episode of Verta Stars Podcast fourth season. My loyal listeners, thank you for continued support. Enjoy this amazing interview because Kane Gallagher boards the mothership to talk Underclass on Kickstarter. Now come aboard as we go traversing the stars. Hi, Mr. Gallagher. Thank you for coming to Verta Stars Podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Totally my pleasure. So I always start off with a question of inspiration to inspire a love for comics and who are your earliest influences.
Um, well, the first comic I ever read was a Wolverine comic. It was Wolverine number 100. So I was like probably 10 years old when I read that, and that was a big influence on me just because the cover was so detailed. And from there I started like exploring more detailed artists, and I kept going and going and going until I stumbled upon Jeff Darrow. So that guy's really my biggest artistic influence these days. So I try to do really hyper detailed uh, line work like he does.
Hmm.
I learned a lot just from studying his work. But in terms of writing, my biggest influence probably Frank Miller.
Frank Miller.
I love Sin City. Sin City's always been a huge inspiration for me, and it's definitely an inspiration for this book because it's
Hmm.
very crime.
So the book we're talking about is called Underclass. Can you kind of go into a little bit of how you approach the creation of this graphic novel? And it's a graphic novel, not a comic book, correct?
Yes, it's a graphic novel.
Great.
So when I first started making it, because it's a collection of short stories, so they're all set in the same place. So when I first started creating it, I my intention was to just make short stories and maybe submit them to Heavy Metal magazine, and then maybe have them come out monthly. That didn't end up happening, so I just kept making them. And then I kept started submitting to publishers, and then by the time I was doing that, I had had enough to compile it all into a graphic novel. So I finally found a publisher last year in Australia, and they were like, "Yeah, it's great. Just chuck it all together. We'll put it in one book, and it's ready to go." And I was like, "Awesome."
So as you're trying to define Underclass, what I read from your campaign is that it's a coming of age story and it's set up in a very violent school called Ava High School. Is that correct?
Yes.
So
Um,
what can you tell us about the nature of this high school? Is it just a regular high school with some violence in it, or is something different about the school?
well, the school is essentially it's a school that teaches kids to be criminals. So it's basically it's where all, kind of the gangsters kids go, but then also everybody in these other criminalized as organizations throughout the city, they could be lower on the totem pole in terms of the gangster hierarchy. They send all their kids there because hoping that their kids could rise up through the ranks. But also there's the local gangs that go there, and they only they only learn petty crime basically. They don't teach them the whole, structure of organized crime because they don't want them to take over. But this book essentially is about the last group of students, which is kids that are local and they're so poor they can't go anywhere else. So they're the lowest in the hierarchy of the school. But essentially, it's about them trying to survive this school because they'll be taught petty crime like the gangs will, but they'll get picked on the most by the gangs and by the criminals. So they're pretty much screwed. So yeah, it becomes kind of more of a revenge tale.
So because we're looking at a world of criminals, who then is your hero of the story or heroes?
Well, there's multiple characters because each story basically focuses on another character. Um, but I would say that the main character is probably the freshman. His name's Frank, and his story is split up into two chapters. It's at the first half is the start of the book, and the second half is the last part of the book. And basically, you see his journey from the first day he gets there to figuring out what the school is all about, and then how to survive, and then getting really, really shat on the whole time he's there, pretty much, and then basically becoming a hardened version of himself, and then taking his revenge.
Hmm.
And in between those chapters is all these other characters that are trying to survive as well, and their ways of coping. And some of them are more violent, some of them are less violent, some of them don't make it, you know.
So when you think about Frank, how is he changed by the school that he's in?
Um, well, he's quite innocent, I would say, when he first comes to the school. I mean, the very first scene is him getting kicked on the floor after he's been beaten up and coughing up blood. So, you can tell he wasn't expecting it.
Hmm.
He didn't know what the school was about because essentially the school is a secret to most of the city. The cops know, but they get paid to look the other way. So when he goes into it, he's only there because he got kicked out of another school, which is, a regular school for drugs, and he wasn't even they weren't even his drugs. Who were holding him for his friend.
Hmm.
So it's essentially he's kind of this innocent character that got screwed by the system. So it's almost like someone that's innocent going to prison and then trying to figure out how to survive there. So by the end of it, yeah, he's definitely a changed person. You can tell even in his facial features, the way I drew him at the start. He's got longer hair. By the end of it, he shaved his head. He's covered in bruises and scars, and he's learned to adapt, essentially.
So what does his parents think about the school? I mean, does he tell his parents the nature of the school once he starts it, or is he afraid to, or do they technically already know, and it's like, what can you do about it?
His parents don't care. Most these kids that go there, they come from such broken homes. Either their parents are alcoholics, or they're just absent parents, or sometimes not even there. I mean, we kind of allude to that in one of the stories. A kid talking about his dad and how he killed his dad, because he's a serial killer character. The story is called Sophomore Serial Killer, and he's one of the most extreme examples of how to survive in the school. You become more violent than the people you're actually around, but we don't actually dive into that in Frank's backstory, but I'm planning to probably a little bit in the next book because there will be a sequel. Yeah.
So is Underclass an allegory for what you view as the public school system, where you are? Or-
A little bit. Look, yeah, it's a little bit of a comment on the American school system, I would say. Um, and when I created this, I thought it was so out there and, ridiculous and extremely violent. My intention was to shock people, and I do think I've done that. However, the last podcast I did with a guy, he said, "Oh, I went to a school that was kind of like that." He said, we had to walk through, metal detectors walking in. And one time I saw a guy get stabbed and he was holding his intestines as they were coming out of him. I was like, Jesus, that's not far off what I've written. Maybe it's closer to the reality than I thought it was. And I guess that's just a side effect of this craziness that I've put together.
So one thing that's in the solicitations and the campaign, obviously, is it's you used the phrase it's ultra violent. The story is ultra violent. How
Absolutely.
is the violence a tool to tell the story?
Well, it has to be violent. Obviously, that's a part of the plot of the story. So, that at its core, it's kind of a revenge story. And my thought is always, if you're going to get revenge against a character in a story, the people who do the things to the person to create the need for revenge has to be so heinous that you're rooting for that person to do something even worse to them. So at its core, it has to start with something really, really bad. You know what I mean? It's like RoboCop. It's like, okay, the start of RoboCop was horrific, but it's one of my favorite movies because then after that, what he does to all those characters is completely justified in our minds. We're like, they deserve it. So it has to be a tool to tell the story.
It's like when John Wick, the puppy dies. I mean, that's even worse than
Exactly.
RoboCop. I mean, let's say for most of us, we'd rather not lose the puppy than what happened in RoboCop.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I love John Wick. Those are some of my favorite movies.
Hmm.
And everyone loves a revenge story.
Yeah,
Everybody wants to see a bad guy get his comeuppance.
right, right. in the world that you created for Underclass, obviously the school is very violent. The neighborhood or the people who are, you said in the gangs are obviously violent. Is the
Yeah.
world itself inherently violent, or is it this aspect of it that's the violent?
I wouldn't say the world, but the city. So the next book is going to expand into the city. So this book is completely self-contained to the school. So we're going to find out in the second one why the school exists in this city. And the city is even worse than the school,
Hmm.
you know. But there's pockets of it that are really, really under control by criminal organizations. And then there's other parts where people are kind of blind to it or they turn their heads and they don't want to know about it, you know what I mean? But essentially, I've tried to create the most corrupt school in the world in the most corrupt city in the world. You know, it's kind of like Gotham, you know, before Batman comes,
Hmm.
but
Now,
more violent.
because I mean, obviously, your world building to an extent. How far is how the nature of this world that you created? Because I know you kind of mentioned the school and how there was a guy who I guess the school does exist in real world on some level. How close is the world surrounding the school to the world as we understand it?
Hmm. I guess it depends on where you live. Um, I mean, there are aspects of it that are pretty close, I would say, in certain cities. I mean, you know, I've tried to kind of make it like New York, but more like New York in the 70s, where everything's dirty, you know, before it got cleaned up and the mayor cleaned it up, you know. Like the movie Taxi Driver, you know. People can be pushed to their limits, yeah, because the city is so bad, you know, but they get so used to it they don't even realize it, you know what I mean? That's kind of where I drew my inspiration for this, you know. Yeah.
But when you think about Frank, the idea that kind of, or the thought that kind of occurs to me is, can a good person exist in this world and maintain their goodness?
Well, yes. To a degree, yes, because essentially by the end of Frank's story, he's trying to protect a girl that he loves,
Hmm.
but she's already so deep in this system because she comes from a Yakuza family. She's expected to go through the hierarchy, but she is not a violent person. She doesn't want to be a part of it, so she pretends she's a part of it, but she never really actually takes part until she's
Hmm.
forced to. But by the end of it, he kind of, I mean, I don't want to give away anything, but he kind of gives everything for her and she's a ray of hope in
Hmm.
this. Yeah.
Now during my day job, I'm a teacher. I teach at a school. So obviously I empathize with the teachers in this world.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Are the teachers in this world, I assume because they're teaching these skills, they're are also part of the gangs and whatnot, or are they, like what are all the teachers, I guess, ganged up or part of these gangs, or are they like, are there's like an English teacher like myself who's just like, what the fuck is happening here?
No, no, essentially all the teachers are employed by the criminal organizations.
Hmm.
So you know, there's one teacher, he's featured in a couple of the stories. Um, and he's essentially works for the mafia, the Italian mafia. But, you know, people don't know that. You know, they think, oh, he's just a part of the system, he's part of the school and all of that. But you know, exploits the lower gangs to get them to do petty crimes and things for him so he can give the profits to the mafia and then he takes a cut and then he raises in the ranks, you know. So the teachers, they're aware of what's happening. They're all a part of it. You know, the system is so deeply structured and built that you're either a part of it or you know you're fucked
Well, as you mentioned,
essentially.
there's the Yakuza, there's Italian mobs and all that stuff. It kind of reminded me of so a couple of schools back. I taught at a school that was had gang activity in the school. Okay.
Mhm.
Um, because this is a school for kids who came out of juvenile detention, and some of the kids would come to our school before they went back into the regular school. We're kind of like a middle school for between juvenile detention and public schools, right?
Yeah.
And within this gang school, there were a couple of a slight code, which is you don't fight in the school. If you're gonna have your
Mhm.
fight, like in the school, they'll work together, be friendly together. You don't fight
Yeah.
until you're out of the building. And that's
Yeah.
have your fight is where the gangs stay with each other, but the school itself is kind of like neutral turf. is there a code in the school for these multiple gangs who I assume would be enemies of each other for those who exist within it?
Yes, well, the number one rule of the whole school is no guns.
Okay.
So you can stab, you can punch, you can beat, you can use any sort of blunt object, but as soon as there's a gun, you're fucked. Like everyone will just destroy you. Everyone forgets about who they hate. They'll gang up on you.
Mm.
Um, and there is a story where a teacher brings a gun, and big mistake. But yeah, that's kind of the main rule. And, I guess it's an unspoken rule that all the violence happens contained within the school. You don't kind of go out into the streets because then it could bring, more attention to the school, you
Mm.
know. But yeah, in one of the first chapters, there's a whole kind of monologue about, okay, well, that's why is there bars on the windows of this school? It's not to so that the kids don't, get out. It's so that people from the outside don't look in and see what's happening.
Mm.
People who see bars in the school, they'll think, oh shit, I better stay away from that school. You know what I mean? It must be a bad school, but
Mm.
I'm not going to look in the windows and see what they're teaching. You know what I mean?
So, what are some of the bigger ideas contained in this graphic novel?
Well, what you mean, like the themes?
Yeah.
Well, like I said, essentially, it's at its core, it's a revenge story. I always love revenge stories, so that's kind of a main one. But it's also about retribution and seeing if you can change through violence, if you can change for the better. Um, but also, there's a little bit of the hint at a love story, I guess. Yeah. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I think it's all just I guess it's a comment on society and how, you know, if you're poor, you don't have many options in this world. And
Right.
I think we all know that, that's we're seeing that more and more these days for sure. But it's kind of pointing that out, if people haven't noticed already. Maybe we are headed to this sort of thing where we have to teach poor people to be criminals because what other option is there? You know
Mm.
what I mean?
Now, I know, for those who don't know, but as they will know soon, Underclass is currently on Kickstarter. So the campaign is currently active for the time of this recording. Um, is this your first Kickstarter?
Yes, it is. But I'm doing it through my publishing company, which is called Wild North Comics. So it's their fourth Kickstarter, but it's personally my first one. Yeah.
So, what have you learned so far about the whole process? What is the key to creating a successful Kickstarter?
Um, I've learned it's a lot. It's a lot of work. For me personally, as the creator, it's a lot. Yeah, because I did the majority of the work. I created the page, um, and I'm doing all the marketing. I'm doing all the social media, or the majority of it anyway. But the most important thing that I've found is before you launch, you should get at least 100 followers because you want people to jump on right away. The more followers you have up front, the more people are going to jump on straight away, and that will push you up in the algorithm.
Hmm.
Now, it won't boost you all the way to the end straight away necessarily, but it definitely helps. That's
Hmm.
what I found the most important. Yeah.
So, what kind of rewards can backers look forward to?
Oh, we've got heaps of stuff, mate. So there's actually three books. Because I submitted my book to my publisher and they had an art competition as well. And I submitted some art to that and I won both of them. So we've got the graphic novel. Then we've got an art book just with all the art that I've done over like 20 years of work. Then we also took all of my hyper detailed line work art and turned that into an adult coloring book. So it's like, the most violent coloring book you can find, There's a lot of really cool stuff in here. Um, you know, really detailed kind of cool
Cool.
cyberpunk stuff, this sort of thing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, thanks, mate. That was one of the first really detailed ones I did. But yeah, so you can get those three books in a bundle. We also we have a tier for people to get their face drawn into the yearbook. for Alva City, and you can
That's
have
cool.
your name and your quote underneath there. We also have skateboards. So I don't know if you can see behind me. I've got a
Oh
couple of Saturn
wow.
lines on them. Yeah. And yeah, they're pretty cool. I just got those printed. Um, what else? We got art, prints, posters, um, a whole catalog of Wild North comics, other graphic novels, and some single issues of our anthologies. Yeah, a lot of stuff, a lot of cool stuff.
Very cool. Now, obviously, this is hasn't happened quite yet, but are you already thinking about the stretch goals that are in the future? Do you have something in mind that you're
I'm
thinking about?
starting to, yeah. I'm thinking maybe some mini prints and some bonus comics, I think, bonus digital comics. I've already got a couple of bonus comics on the digital tier. I've got two other Australian comics makers on there, and they've got some really great comics. But I've started to build this community of all these other creators online and in groups and stuff. And everyone's so happy to share their work for these tiers and stretch goals.
Hmm.
So I could put together potentially like 10 more books to give digitally. And yeah, trust me, they're all pretty good.
Well, Lisa, if you need a book, I have ones as well. I can be happy to share with you.
Oh, cool. Thanks, man. Yeah, that's awesome.
One is a sci-fi story that I'm working on the third issue of, and then there's one of a sort of horror story. It's about a an angel that found himself in hell, and he's fighting his way to back for revenge against God. He's working his way up the ladder of tiers of afterlife, I suppose. So I can see the first few couple of issues for both because they're free. Don't worry about it.
Oh, cool, man. Yeah, that second one sounds awesome, actually. I'd love to read that.
Oh, we haven't said it. Like I said, the first two are complete. The third issue is on the way, and then there's a few side issues that kind of give a bit of a backstory to some of the other characters that are involved. I'm proud of them, but their minds I'm a little biased. So there it is.
Okay, what's it called? What's the title?
The title, Malik Raining Devil.
Oh, cool, cool. Yeah, sounds
Yeah, like I said,
awesome.
I'm proud of it. It's your interview, but basically, like I said, it's about a character who God sends to hell to kill the devil, and the rule is the one if you kill the devil, you become the devil. So he
Yeah,
realizes that not only is now he can't go back to heaven because once you step foot in hell, you're damned forever.
yeah,
And he can't make it in now that he's also stuck as the devil now. So obviously he goes from what the thought of God would be that he would be a servant in hell that he can now control. But Malik realizes this is bullshit. Why did I do this? Why did I agree to this crap? And he's gonna work
yeah,
for revenge. And it goes up
yeah, yeah.
about six
It's
issues.
essentially a no-win situation, isn't it? And he
Right.
got suckered into doing a shit job.
But yeah, I'll be happy to send it. But yeah, it sounds like the stretch goals are awesome. The campaign's awesome. What are the dates of this act that it's active for?
It finishes on the 12th of July, I believe, around midday here. So that would be midnight in America.
Midnight on the. It's
The
like
20.
think of the math on this is crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's midnight on what day for anyone in East Coast?
The 25th it would be for you guys. Yeah.
All right. So July 25th,
Yep.
July 25th at midnight for anyone living on the East Coast of the United States because you're in Australia and the time
Yep.
zones are crazy the way they work. So you're technically in the future.
Yes,
Or I'm in the
exactly.
past. It's one or the other. However you
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
want.
Back to the future.
But like I said, it all sounds awesome. Mr. Gallagher, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. We'll make sure we put the link to your campaign on the show notes so people go look for it. Back it while you still can. And thank you so much for doing it.
Thanks for having me, mate. I had a blast. Yeah, great meeting you.
So my pleasure, sir. Have a great day or night,
You
depending
too.
where you are.
Morning.
Morning. Well, enjoy the day ahead.
You too.
All right.
All right.
Bye.
See ya.